Hello and welcome to another episode of the VCDX Podcast, a short-form podcast focused on the VCDX certification with news, updates and advice and as special guests. My name is Simon Long, VCDX number 105, and in this episode we'll be offering you some advice on ways to recover from failing your latest VCDX certification attempt. Here's a taste of what's coming up.
And to be completely honest, my journey for data center virtualization started in, I think, 2010. I didn't get it till 2012, and that was 4 attempts later. So I actually had to go through 4 defenses before I passed.
But there's been some defenses I've been in where clearly the person has been so nervous that they're not able to give their best.
I was nervous, and I walked in and Chris Colati was sitting there, and I knew him from Twitter, and I crapped myself. I was like, oh my God. So yeah, that was probably the worst experience of my life.
Welcome to the news and updates section. With VMworld 2019 firmly behind us and the dust has settled, it's time to let you know about the next VCDX workshop that's coming up. The next workshop we have is at the Boston VMUG, which will be held on Wednesday, September the 25th, so about 2 weeks from the release of this podcast. So for those of you who are interested, I'll put the registration link in the show notes as usual. And if you're not really familiar with what a VCDX workshop is, I highly recommend you check out episode 2 of the VCDX podcast, where Chris Muchler and I talk to you about all of the different advantages that you can get from attending one of these workshops. I think at the moment we've also got some VCDX panels actively happening this week, so good luck to those who are defending this week. And hopefully in the next episode we'll have some news of successful passes in the VCDX community. So that's all for this week in the news and updates section. Let's head into the guest interview. You're listening to the VCDX podcast. Moving on to our guest interview. Who is this episode's special guest? Give me your name and your number.
Hi, my name is Mike Brown, and I am number 71.
Hey Mike, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me. And the question is, have you recovered from VMworld yet?
I have, I think. I'm getting there. It was a wild week, but I think I'm recovered now.
Yeah, I mean, those weeks are always fun. I remember we bumped into each other at the VCDX round table on the Sunday morning, so kind of almost before everything started kicking off, and had lots of energy at that point, and then it slowly kind of went downhill from then onwards.
Yeah, as the week goes on, the energy level tends to go down. Yeah.
Coffee consumption goes up.
I can't even make it to the parties anymore. I'm too old. I don't know.
But it was definitely a good week. I really enjoyed it. So, which VCDX certifications do you have?
So the first one I did was data center virtualization, and then about a year ago I did my second one, which was network virtualization.
Very cool. Are you involved in the VCDX program at all today, like from a panelist, mentoring, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I do sit some panels when they need me. So yep. I've probably done 20 or so. I started in about 2012 doing panels, so I've done around 20 since then.
Very cool. So, Mike, just tell us about your current role. What is it you do? Who do you work for? Just to give us a bit of an understanding about your background.
Sure. So I work for VMware. Today, it depends on when you listen to this, but as of today, I work in the VMware Validator design team, where I own all the networking stack and a lot of the core vSphere stack. On the 30th of September, I am moving roles into getting a promotion up to what we call senior staff at VMware, and I'm moving to our telco NFV business unit.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I'll be involved in all the new 5G architecture and all that kind of new fun stuff over there.
Very cool. Well, first of all, congratulations. That's breaking news there on the VCDX podcast, but that's great news. I mean, we obviously worked with each other when I was at VMware a couple of years ago when you were in the VVD team, so it's nice that you've got a promotion and you're now going to be doing something slightly different to kind of stretch your knowledge and test you a little bit further, which is great.
Exactly. Yeah. It's always, I like to keep fresh, so this will definitely keep me fresh. Stuff that I have not touched in years and some stuff that I've never even seen before, so
very cool.
It'll be fun.
Definitely. All right. So, Mike, I know in the past when we've talked about the VCDX and the VCDX program, you mentioned that you didn't pass your VCDX the first time. And as you know, many people taking the VCDX don't pass on their first attempt. Like, it's a very small percentage that do. So based on your experiences, what words of advice can you give our listeners to help them when they're not successful with their latest attempt?
Yeah, sure. So I've, being in the community and everything on Twitter and everything for years, going through all the VCDX stuff, I see a lot of people who don't pass the first time and they just give up.
Yeah.
That unfortunately, I think happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that's my first piece is don't give up. Like you just said, a lot of people don't pass the first time. And to be completely honest, my journey for data center virtualization started in, I think, 2010. I didn't get it till 2012, and that was 4 attempts later. So I actually had to go through 4 defenses before I passed. So
yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, it's like, people take the first attempt and they fail and they kind of immediately say like, this is too much effort, or I'm not good enough, or, that's obviously not the case in the majority of the time. It's just like, but what can we do to help people realize that, okay, just because you failed first time, it doesn't mean you can't pass the second, the third, or the fourth, or however long it takes for you to get there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think it's a lot of, perseverance. Some people have it, some don't. And I think a lot sitting on panels, I think I can say this. I think a lot of people are just like insanely nervous when they come in, especially the first time. It's kind of an intimidating process. So, people sitting on the panels aren't out to get you, and they're just asking the questions they need to score you so that you can pass. When we sit on panels, our job is not to try and fail people. It's actually to try and pass people. So, we ask the questions we ask just so that we can try and get that score that we need to be able to so you can pass.
And it's a good point. I mean, everyone is going to have some nerves at some point. But there's been some defenses I've been in where, like, clearly the person has been so nervous that they're not able to give their best, which is, disappointing for them because they've done all this hard work to get themselves in the room with you. And I think they've maybe they worked themselves up so much about the process and what happens within the defense that they're not able to perform to their highest ability. So, as a panelist now, is there any kind of tips you can give people who are extremely nervous about it? Anything that could help calm them down? I know it's very difficult for us to do because ultimately we're going to say, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Just come in. But I think, as panelists, I certainly try to do my best. If I feel that someone is very nervous, you can kind of tell when they come into the room, whether they're, relaxed or whether they're a little bit tense. And then sometimes I'll try and maybe drop a little joke in there or something, or if it's within the first slide on this, within their presentation, I'll ask them a very simple question to try and help them kind of relax a little bit more like that. I mean, I kind of take
the same approach. So, something else not a lot of people know about me is I am autistic. So maybe that was probably the reason why I didn't give up, is because once I set my mind to it, I have to finish something once I start it. I can't stop. It's just part of my nature. So I don't pick up on some of the stuff like that when people walk in the room. I have a hard time reading people.
Okay.
But if I do notice somebody that is nervous or somebody else mentions it, like you said, I try and crack a joke. I'm obviously not the best joke teller, but or kind of throw them a softball, like you said, just to get their, maybe hopefully it brings their nerves down, but if not, at least it gives them some confidence in answering a question. Say, I know the answer to this, so I can answer this, and boost their confidence a little bit, so maybe they relax a little bit. I would just tell people, everybody who sits on the panel has been where you've been, and we're all just people, and at the end of the day, we want to see the program succeed, and we want it to grow.
And that's the thing. I mean, we want people to be at their best in the defense, right? So being so nervous that you can hardly think you're not going to be at your best. So, try and figure out what you can do as yourself, as someone who's defending, to try and calm your nerves a little bit. I mean, you're never going to get rid of them completely, of course. but try and figure out, okay, if you know you're going to go in there and you're extremely anxious, that's not going to be a good state for you to go in there. So try and figure out some ways to, calm yourself down, maybe do a bit of meditation or simple breathing before you get into the room, and maybe come into the room, say hello to everyone, look them in the eye. Some people don't even like to do that a lot of the time. And then almost just try and calm yourself before you get in the room. Because I think sometimes some people are beaten, or, they've already kind of failed themselves before they get into the room because they just aren't able to do, what they need to do, which is a shame because it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say that too. Yeah. I think a lot of people fail themselves before they even walk in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because to even get to that point, you've done a lot of work, and obviously your design is good enough or you wouldn't be in the room to begin with.
Yep. Definitely.
So it's really just, answering the questions. And then another thing I've noticed is, and I'm not great at this myself, but whiteboarding skills. I can't emphasize that. That's a pretty big one too. Being able to get stuff up on the board and get designs on the board. Is a big deal.
And I think, like, even for me as well, I'm not great at writing on the whiteboard. I'm left-handed, so it doesn't make it a bit easier because you can't really rest your hand on the board and things. But the only way you're going to improve is just practice, unfortunately. So, like, just get yourself a whiteboard at home, in your home, in the office, at work, and even when things don't need to be whiteboarded out, just write your to-do lists on there, and just get used to just writing things on a whiteboard. And the more you do it, the more you'll feel comfortable of doing it. So when you get asked a question, it will just kind of flow. So, that's a good tip on how to kind of practice on the whiteboarding side. So, Mike, kind of between when you knew that you failed and your next attempt, like, what sort of things did you do to try and, improve your defense the next time, or your design, or those?
So, yeah, that's a good question. So in between, I would, you get feedback. So when you fail, you get, so anybody who's failed knows this, but you get an email and it's a little vague. I mean, it can't be super specific, but it tells you some areas that you need to work on. So I would take that and I would, go research those areas more, learn more about those areas. And then sometimes I would change the design in those areas. And sometimes I'd be like, my design was good in that area. Maybe I just didn't perform well in, the troubleshooting or the scenario or just defending that part of my design. Maybe I was just weak there. So I would go through and I kept a OneNote journal of just possible questions I could get asked, and what the answers could be, or different parts of my design that I wasn't 100% confident that I could just spout off. I would have in that OneNote document, and I could just go back and just keep reading it back and forth to myself. I did that quite a bit between the three. I think what really helped the most, and I only did this once, and it was before the one I passed, so maybe this is what did it, but I actually did a mock defense. So I had Jason Bakke, Scott Lowe, and Rick, and I can never pronounce his last name. Starts with an S.
Rick Scherner, I think.
Yes. Him. Yep. Yes. I can't. Yeah, I'm bad with names. But they did a mock defense for me, and I think that probably helped the most out of everything that I did.
Oh, great. That's a really good tip. I mean, I've spoke to a lot of people who have preparing recently on some of the previous episodes of the VCDX podcast, and a lot more people are doing the mock defenses now, to the point where some people have done like 10 plus mock defenses. Which, yeah, I know, right? And that's a lot. But I mean, if that's
a lot.
But if that's what it takes to get you comfortable with being in a situation where you get asked different questions about your design and being able to talk about it, then that's what it takes, right? I mean, no one wants to do a mock defense at all. Like, I don't. If someone said to me, "Want to do a mock?" I'd be like, "No, not really," because it's never fun. I mean, some people may find it fun, but I personally don't. But it's certainly better to do it now than, just the defense being your mock and the actual defense at the same time. So I think that's a really good tip, and certainly something we've been hitting home here on this podcast is try and get as many mock defenses in as you can with various different people, not necessarily the same people over and over as well, because you'll see it from other people's perspectives.
Yeah, that's true. And another thing I did the last time that I defended was I knew my design had some errors, some flaws in it. So I actually called those out. So I don't know. So sitting back as a panelist, I'm like trying to think if that's good or bad, but that's what I did. So like during the slides as I was going through my presentation, I would say my design says this, but oh, by the way, that's wrong. It should actually be this, and just kind of called out stuff that was wrong in the design, and because my design was 100% fictitious.
Okay.
And I would say that's very hard to defend. If I had it to do over again, I wouldn't. So when I did my NV, it was not fictitious. I think fictitious designs are very easy for panelists to poke holes in. So if you can base it on something real world and then add some fictitious stuff to it, that's fine. But it's just, you don't really stop and think about every little thing when you're just making it up on the fly.
No, you really don't. And then it's not, when you have a real customer design or a design for your company, you've had those discussions, and almost when someone asks you a question, you can almost see that conversation that you had with that certain person in that department to ask them what's the best way we'd like to do this.
Exactly.
And it just makes it a lot easier, rather than, someone asking you a question when, if it's fictitious, you have to just make something up. I'm not great at lying anyway, so that kind of makes, which is probably why I'm not in sales, but but that's kind of why for me it was a lot easier to use a design that I knew I'd have all those conversations on, and I could picture that as when I was going to ask the questions. But I definitely agree with pointing out things if it's not correct in the design up front. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously, ideally, you'd like to have the document that the panelists have reviewed for a good 4 hours to be what you are defending, because there's nothing worse than a panelist where you've gone in and you've kind of gone through all of this 200-page document and you've got all these questions, and then suddenly someone comes in and says, "Oh, all of this is wrong. It's actually this." Try, if you can, beforehand, get your design done and try not to make too many changes in it unless there's a big gaping hole in it between your application review and the actual defense itself. That would be, it might be my request as a panelist. Try not to make too many changes, because it can make it harder for us to kind of understand what's happening, especially when you've kind of changed half the design from what we know.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
All right. So Mike, knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time, back to when you're preparing for your first VCDX defense, what 3 pieces of advice would you give yourself?
Oh man. So like we talked about earlier, nerves. When I walked in that first time, I was so nervous. And this design was based on like a 3.x design. And it was, I was nervous, and I walked in and Chris Collati was sitting there, and I knew him from Twitter, and I just I crapped myself. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So that was probably the worst experience of my life, was that defense. So definitely just figure out a way to get over your nerves, and no matter who's on your panel, whether it's Simon or myself or Duncan or Frank, or it doesn't matter.
Nope.
They're just people. So
unfortunately, it's not until you kind of, if you don't know them beforehand, maybe you'll meet them afterwards, and maybe at the VCDX roundtables or something similar. It's not until afterwards that you realize, oh, they're just other people just like me. And that's kind of a shame. We'd rather that beforehand, because when you come into the room, you just see them as just your peers rather than people looking down on you, which is certainly not what we do. Right,
for sure. Yeah, so that's a big one. And I mentioned earlier too, whiteboarding skills. My whiteboarding skills were horrible. Yeah. I mean, just like really, really bad. So practice whiteboarding, and then and this is probably like common sense, but know the design. I mean, not just the design, but how things worked in the design. So I think my first design was solid, but I didn't understand how all the technologies worked together as well as I should have. To be honest, I probably shouldn't have been in the room to begin with. I wasn't ready. I mean, I walked in and it was very easy for them to tell that I didn't know a lot of the stuff that was in that design. I mean, easy stuff like how HA works, for example.
Right.
Back in the 3X days, it was way more complicated than it is now. But even so, I couldn't answer some of those questions, and I was like, ugh. So that was a really bad feeling. So definitely know the ins and outs of the technologies that you're presenting inside of the document. I mean, anything you throw in there is fair game. So I had SRM in there, which I was fairly good with SRM, but a lot of candidates throw technology in to throw it in.
Yeah.
And even if you're not defending an NSX design, if you have NSX in your design and you come into a defense, you're going to get asked about it. So
yeah,
definitely know everything, all the products that you're putting in and the configuration that you've got in there.
Yeah. And that's a good kind of piece of advice from that is don't just throw in products for the sake of throwing in products as well. Like people think if I add more different products in, then that will give me more points. No, you just need to make sure that your design covers the requirements from the customer and also covers the areas in the blueprint. You don't have to keep throwing in multiple different products to do the same thing. And it will only just make things more complicated for you because you'll need to understand all of them.
I think that hurts a lot of people when they start throwing in, especially products that they're not design experts in.
Yeah.
Or know exactly how the technology works and they're throwing them in. Or I've seen a few times where people will jointly work on something together, and which is fine. And they submit the same design, but you both have to know everything about the design. You can't say, "Oh, I didn't do that part."
Yeah.
Because then we can't score you on it, and it brings you down. And so if you're going to work on something together, definitely know both everything that you did and everything that your partner that you're working with did.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point. And we've seen that happen a few times before. We kind of get to the storage section. They're like, well, I don't really remember that my colleague did that part, which we all know that happens in real life. Unfortunately, that just means we'll end up asking you more storage questions within the design scenario, which you have to think on your feet, which probably is for some people is more intense. And
yes.
And just because the real life design maybe had NSX in it, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to keep that in if you're not confident with it. As long as you've still got networking and the networking will do whatever the design needs to be done. A lot of customers may request NSX because they had it as part of an ELA and they want to use the licenses, etc. The design doesn't always have to be what the design was with the customer. You can customize it. It doesn't have to be 100% real. And in Mike's case, it was 100% fictitious. So if you kind of look,
I wouldn't recommend that, but definitely take stuff out or add stuff in if you need to meet some requirements. But for sure, if you're not comfortable with something, take it out.
Yeah, as long as you can still cover the areas of the blueprint with a different technology that maybe you're more familiar with. Like for example, if you're not necessarily familiar with hyperconverged, you could maybe go back to a 3-tier or a 3-tier storage architecture instead. It's not. It's not like we wouldn't know any different as long as you're able to defend it and it's able to work with your design. There's no harm in doing that as well. So kind of work to your strengths as well, and obviously work towards what needs to be covered in the blueprint. So there's some really good tips there, Mike. That's awesome. Well, mate, thank you very much for taking your time out in your busy schedule, and now you're about to get a lot busier. So I'm glad I managed to get you on the podcast before that.
Right. For sure.
But thank you very much for your time, and great to speak to you. And no doubt I'll catch up soon.
Awesome, man. Great. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, mate. Take it easy. So in this week's common mistakes section, I want to talk a bit about design decisions. And this is something that we've noticed quite a lot lately, and this topic was brought up to me by Chris Mutchler, my special guest from episode number 2. And what we're seeing is some candidates not being able to defend their design decisions. So, for example, the candidate is saying they're going to be using this server size or they're going to be using this configuration for their storage array. And then when they're being asked the question, okay, so why did you decide to do this? Occasionally there'll be times where the candidate is not able to give us an answer for whatever reason. And obviously this is not what we're looking for as a panel. We want to know that every different decision that is made throughout the design process has been thought about and there's reasonings behind why you made those decisions. Rather than just saying, okay, well, that's the default setting. Well, why is it the default setting? And think to yourself, what if I change these default settings? What does that mean for my design? So, taking a step back, before you go into the defense, when you are going through your design documentation, look at all of the settings that you're making within the document and think to yourself, why did I make that design decision for that setting? Why did I decide to do that? And make sure you know why you decided to do that. And also think to yourself at the same time, why did I decide to do that and not the other options available to me? And then start to think to yourself, what are the other options available to you at that point? And then think about, okay, these are the options that were also available to me. Why have I decided to not do those as well? Because you need to understand why you've made a decision, what the other options are available to you, and the reasons why you didn't make the other options part of your design. So I think there's some really good advice there on some of the common mistakes we're seeing within VCDX sessions. So I hope that will help you in the future. That's all we have time for on this episode of the VCDX Podcast. Again, thanks to my special guest, Mike Brown. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please be sure to subscribe and share with others who might find this podcast interesting. I'll speak to you all again in a few weeks' time.